Old guy here. Today we're talking about the Hazet Ratchet 1/2 inch. It's extendable for length. The other thing about this is it's rated at 1,000 Newton meters or 737 foot-pounds of torque. The reason I like this is the expandability. Depending upon, let's say, how high you have your car up off the ground and you have to get underneath it to torque something, this allows you to use as much space as possible. This is about the size of a regular, right now, unexpanded, is about the size of a breaker bar. But depending upon how tight the location is that you're trying to get into to break loose a fastener or tighten a fastener, I like the expandability. Since it's a ratchet, you don't have to take off your socket or take out your breaker bar, readjust it so it fits again, and you've got this much room to move, okay? With a ratchet, you're just moving it that little bit. Anyway, we're going to show you the box, we're going to show you what it replaces, and we're going to talk about it. Then, we're going to go out in the field, we're going to go out to a junkyard, we're going to put it to use and show you how the expandability works. So here's our tool. This is the box that came in. I'm not going to do an unboxing because I think that's just a waste of time. So it's a Hazet 916 HP LG, 1/2 inch, 1,000 Newton meters. It's made in Germany. And I've used this a couple of times and it works pretty good. Now, when you go to expand it, don't hold it here and try to turn this. It doesn't work that well. You unhook it here, you expand it out, and you tighten it, okay? Now, I'm sorry, you can expand it out at any length you want and tighten it, and now it becomes your breaker bar. So, see, I did it wrong. As you can see, we have a 1/2 inch breaker bar. Now, this is an old Craftsman, made in the USA, and if you look closely, you can see it's slightly bent. This is another Craftsman, made in the USA, flexible head ratchet. If you'll notice, all these are about the same length. Now, if you get into a tight location on a car, sometimes to get that extra oomph, you might put a piece of pipe over your breaker bar. And that's fine, but one of the problems is that depending upon where this fastener is you want to break loose, if it's on the outside of the car, it's not too problem, but if it's in, like, let's say, the rear axle area or the brake area on a VW MK5, Mark 6, Mark 7, or even the front, you're limited on how much of a piece of pipe you can add to this because it hits the floor or ground, whatever you're working on. So that limits it. Or you could have a bunch of different pieces of pipe. So you could have different lengths. You could have one that fits this area and it comes out here. You could have one that's this long, you know, but easier is just to expand that out. This gets, I'd say that's fairly long, and it allows you to get a fastener loose, and you don't, unlike a breaker bar, once you get to the limit of where you can turn it, you have to take it off, put it back on your fastener, and then tighten it again. The other problem is there's a certain amount of flex in this head. And there's also a certain amount of flex between the socket. So if you have a socket on, wrong socket, okay. If you have a socket on here, you see that you can really see the amount of flex in the head. And this is, forged in the USA. So this is how much flex you get. And if you got a really tight area, that's going to limit. So you're taking this off, turning it, and then tightening it again. Whereas with this, you're in a tight area, you turn it, and boom. It's got 80, and divide 80 into 360, so it's got, I don't know, what is that? About 5 degrees of rotation. That's the reason I bought this. Now next up, we're gonna go in the junkyard and use this on the rear of a Mark 5 VW to undo the 2 caliper carrier bolts, which are up behind the hub carrier and hard to get to. I don't know how well that's gonna shoot in the junkyard, but we'll give it a try. Okay, one thing I forgot to mention, I'm gonna talk about those same rear caliper carrier bolts on the back of a Mark 5. You've got no room in there to tighten. So those bolts are bolted down to 95 foot-pounds of torque. And then you're supposed to tighten it another 90 degrees. Now this is where you're pulling out your breaker bar and sticking it in there and trying to get that 90 degrees. Well, like I was saying before, you've got little room, so you go a little bit, you pull off the breaker bar, reset the socket, and sometimes you actually have to turn the socket. You don't have to do that with this. So because this is rated for 1,000 foot-pounds, I mean 1,000 Newton meters or 737 foot-pounds, you don't have to take it back off. So you're tightening that nut on, and since this will take the torque, you keep fastening it, and you can tighten it up that 90 degrees. Now, last time I did that on my car, I used a 250-pound torque wrench. I set it to 200 pounds, and I got the 90 degrees, and because the torque wrench is a ratchet, it went on. And it didn't click at 200 foot-pounds. So this is rated at 737. So this will handle that more than not, because that particular fastener is somewhere between 150 and 200 foot-pounds of torque. It clicks real short, and this is one of the main reasons I got it. All the stuff on the rear end of a VW or Audi A3, well, probably any Audi, everything's always, there's no room. Okay, like this here, there's 2 bolts that run all the way through the hub, okay? And to hold on this carrier, well, you don't have any room up here where you can get leverage. So the only place you have leverage is from underneath and the back. So what we're gonna do is we're going to show how we extend this for the maximum area, because when you're back here, if I brought out a breaker bar and the breaker bar is shorter than this, I'd need a pipe or something to break it loose. But this allows me to break it loose, and I can make the handle as long as I need to. We've got these 2 bolts that hold on the caliper carrier on the rear here. And this is on any VW Mark 5, Mark 6, Passat, Audi A3s. There's just a lot of stuff in the way. So the idea being behind this extendable ratchet is you can make it as long as you need to. And this ratchet's rated at 737 foot-pounds of torque. So you can take it off with it. You can also do your 90 degree, because when you tighten these bolts up, they're 95 foot-pounds plus 90 degrees. So it's not easy to get. Anyway, and see, it's a ratchet, so you can just keep doing it until it's really loose. Now we're going to be doing the upper bolt, and since it's the upper bolt, we can extend this arm down as far as we need to. And that way we even have more leverage and it makes it even easier. And since it's a ratchet, I don't have to reposition a breaker bar. And I can actually just take it off, but my 3/8 Milwaukee drive will fit up in there to take those off, so I don't have to do it from underneath, but it's just to break it off. Okay, so when I was putting those bolts back in my car, it was 95 foot-pounds plus 90 degrees. And I used a 250-pound torque wrench. That's a ratchet. And I cranked it up to 200 because I went to 150 and it clicked, and I put it up to 200 and it clicked. But now I'll be able to use this bar to tighten it up on that 90 degrees because this takes 737 pounds of torque.